So Boker Tov, good morning. Today's Torah portion is, anybody know? Toldos, which means birth, and is a very, very beautiful Torah portion. And today I'm going to focus on something very beautiful, the quintessential paradigm of being accountable, a guide to parenting based on the Torah portion of the birth of the twins, Jacob and Esau being older, and the patriarch Isaac and his beloved wife, Rebecca. So let me give a little summation of the Torah portion, and then we're going to get into the depth of this Torah portion based on, of course, the commentaries and Hasidus, Jewish mysticism, which is Kabbalah. So Toldos in a nutshell. We left off with Isaac and Rebecca, love at first sight from the previous Torah portion, and 20 years they're childless, which seems to be the theme. Sarah was childless, remember, till she gave birth to Isaac. And now Yitzchak and Rivka also have no children. And yet we know there has to be a continuity of the lineage, correct? We have to come to the part where there's 12 tribes. Finally, they pray, and Rivka conceives. And we're going to discuss how she struggles with the children inside of her. What does this mean? And Esav is born first, then came Yaakov. He's holding on to the heel of his brother, so they name him Heel, Yaakov, which in itself is a very strange name. And we notice that Esav is growing up, and he doesn't follow the path of his father and mother or his grandparents. He's a hunter, and he's hanging out with the idolaters. And Yaakov seems to show the leadership of monotheism, following the ways of his grandparents, following the ways of God. In the meantime, they're living with the Philistines, who are similar to what's happening now. Every time Yitzchak digs wells for water, they stuff it up. There's terrorist activities. And not only that, when Avram dies, these same Philistines seal up all the wells in his absence, just to create chaos. And the Torah portion ends, which we're going to go into in a second, with Yitzchak is getting older. And if you remember, he's visually impaired, he can't see, and he has to give the final blessings. And he blesses Jacob disguised in his brother Esau's hunting clothes. And Esau, realizing that his brother got the blessings to be the next Jewish leader, wants to come after him and kill him. And it ends off with Rivka, his wise mother, says, run away for now until things quiet down. This is the Torah portion. And there's so many questions that we have to ask about this Torah portion. There's so much going on here that's so unclear that if you were just to read the stories, there's so many innuendo here. And that's what we're going to go in. Hopefully we'll be able to address a few of the controversial topics here. But I want to start off with Rivka and the birth. And excuse me for 1 second, I just must get a tissue. So give me 1 second, I apologize. So let me read the pasuk inside, and you tell me what you think, okay? I'm going to read the pasuk inside, what happens. And Rebecca, his wife, conceived. Rivka now becomes pregnant. And this is from the pasuk. Vayisru tzutzu habanim bekirba. And the children struggled together within her. Vatomer, and she said, Im Cain, and this is the pivotal line, Lama za anaychi. Who am I? Who am I? Vatelech ledrosh es Hashem. So she went to inquire of the Lord. Good morning, Shelley. So you see what's going on here? Rivka's pregnant. She feels a struggle within her womb. So she goes and she says, ask Lama Zanachi, what's going on with me? What's going on with me? So she goes to consult with God. She goes to have a conversation with Almighty God. So Rashi, let's start off with Rashi, because Rashi says something fascinating. What does it mean that they struggled within her? Okay? It says that when she would pass a house of worship, of idolatry, Esau started to try to jump out. She felt tremendous movement and kicking, says Rashi. And when she passed by a house of Torah study, a yeshiva, a shul, Yaakov, the second twin, which she would feel tremendous kicking. So Rashi explained, what does it mean she felt struggle? She felt things, babies kicking. And she realized when she passes the house of idolatry, one baby's kicking. And when she passes a house of Torah, the second baby is kicking like they want to get out. And she consults with God. She says, Lama za'anoichi. What's going on with me? She doesn't know she has twins yet. God tells her, what's going on with me? Why do I have a child in my womb that seems to be Jekyll and Hyde? When I pass a shul, I feel kicking. When I pass a house of idolatry or idol worshippers, kicking. Is the child kicking for Torah, or is the child kicking for idolatry? What does God respond to her? Hashem answers her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 separate people shall issue from your body. So now God tells her, no. You don't have one child in your womb that's conflicted. You have 2 children in your womb. One has a tendency for idolatry, and one is leaning towards spirituality, holiness, Torah, godliness. This is the response. And in this conversation, we find a beautiful, deep explanation, first of all, about who should we be as parents, and 2, a much deeper conversation is going on here. So let's just start with the parenting first. Then we'll go into the deeper Kabbalistic insight here. First, she's basically blaming herself. It's my fault that I have a child and now she has children. She didn't know they were twins. That I have a child that's conflicted. It's my fault. What did I do wrong? She's taking accountability right away. What did I do wrong that I have one child that sometimes does the right thing and one child that sometimes does something awful and terrible? What did I do wrong? She's looking into herself to say, what did I do? What did I do? How did I educate my child that they should be this way? Maybe they saw in me something, and that's why they're acting out. Most parents don't blame themselves. Most parents blame the child. Why can't you be like mommy and daddy? Didn't we teach you the right way? I was a straight A student. Your mother, she was valedictorian. Me, I never missed a day in school. Your mother, perfect scores. Rivka right away feels accountable. What's going on with my children that they are this way? Then God tells us there's 2 nations. But that doesn't change her perspective of feeling, what did I do? Or what didn't I do? Or what could I have done for my children? So that's one insight, that if you want to speak about parenting and how to be a parent, we look at the matriarchs and the patriarchs. She doesn't renege on responsibility or blame someone else. She can blame her husband. She can blame her parents. She can blame her siblings. It's all your fault. And remember, Rivka came from a house of deceit, parents who were swindlers. She came from a city that they were mafia. They lived by the sword. They lived by theft. They lived by killing. That was their code. That's why she's called a rose among thorns. So she knows what people are like. She didn't grow up in Israel in a palace where she didn't know the real world. She grew up with swindlers and killers and thieves. She says, what did I do wrong? What's going on here, Almighty God? And then God tells her something very, very powerful. So on one hand, she's discussing her role as a mother. Then God is telling her, there's two nations in your womb. There's two people in your body. So Chassidus explains something so powerful that what God is really also telling her on the steeper level is how a person is born, how their life, body, soul works. There are two nations in your womb. Who are the two nations? Anybody know? Two souls. Who are the two souls that every person is born with? The Nefesh Elokis explains the Kabbalah. Anybody want to say?
The animal soul.
Very good. Who said the animal soul?
I did, Shelley.
Shelley. And the Nefesh HaBahamas, the animal soul. God is telling her something very, very powerful here. God is telling her, you know, the secret to every human being is you have two souls. You have the Nefesh Elokis, a piece of God in every person, Chelak Elokam Emal Mamish, and that godly soul. Anybody want to describe, what do you think the godly soul is? What exactly is its role in your psyche? Freud would love this.
Yeah.
What is the role of the godly soul within you and within me?
More spiritual, mitzvot, doing the right thing all the time, studying.
Right. Very good, but why? Why is that the role of the godly soul?
Because that's what that portion of Judaism teaches. The other one is the earthly, right? So
very good.
One is heaven and one is earth.
Very good. Good analogy. The godly soul is God in you. It channels the divine energy. It channels the divine will. It doesn't have another agenda. It's pure. The Nefesh Elokis. Sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, it's to connect with Hashem and meet our potential.
Yeah, exactly. The pure, what Freud used to call the id, that if you could get back to the inner child in psychology and psychiatry and therapy is that everybody is born pure and whole and perfect. And then layers of trauma and abuse and challenges and suffering cover that over. But if you could start peeling back those layers like an onion and get back to the inner child, the Nefesh Elokis, you could heal. You have to go back. You know, sometimes you have, you know, you cut into an apple, but you're not throwing out that apple, even though it's rotten. You're going to cut and cut and cut till you get one part that's good. Our space wastes the good apple, right? That's what it is. The Nefesh Elokis is the part of ourselves that's never touched by anything that happens. It's always there. It could be buried. It could be recessed. It could be hidden. You would think, I don't have a Nefesh Elokis. Look at me. I'm a terrible person. I don't have anything good about me. Forget about me. Leave me alone. Let me wallow in my addictions and my pain. You might think that. But no, the Nefesh Elokis is always there. It is the purest, untouched part of us. And if we allow ourselves to hear it, connect to it, it leads us on the right path of life. It's what gives us our happiness, our joy, our feeling of, you know what? I'm a pretty good person. I feel good about myself. Now, what's the nefesh Bahamas, the animal soul? That's how we have free choice. That's what gives us our challenges and our struggles, but our greatest reward. So the nefesh Bahamas is like an animal. What's an animal? It has one thing, an instinct for survival. It doesn't go by intellect. It goes, how can I survive? Sometimes I have to attack to survive. Sometimes I have to hide to survive. But it goes by instinct. I'm hungry, I'll eat. I'm tired, I'll sleep. It's like an animal. And it is the balance of the godly soul. It tries to bury the godly soul. No. Don't give me that purity stuff. I like to have anxiety and stress. It keeps me on my toes. If I wake up relaxed, it's a problem for me. For 50 years, I've been stressed. Don't heal me right now. I'm relying on that. So there's a constant, and we all feel it. If you're in touch with it, there's a constant battle. You wake up some days and you go through your day. Wow, you're like skating through life. I feel happy. I feel content. I feel fulfilled. I feel so good about myself today. I'm a great wife. I'm a great mother. I'm a great boss. I'm a great employee. I'm a great teacher, whatever you are in your life. My friends love me. I love me. It's perfect. And the next day, the same person, you wake up and everything is horrible and terrible. Why did I marry this guy? My kids, get them out of my sight. I don't even know why I had children. My house, what possessed me to paint my house this color? I hate it all. My life is terrible. I hate my job. I hate everybody. And you're depressed and angry and upset. What happened? You're the same person. But the first day, your nefesh elokis, your godly soul, was in the driver's seat. The next day, your nefesh Bahamas, your animalistic soul, is in the driver's seat, telling you, what? You think you're great? You think you're so fantastic? What? You're nothing. Just stay down. Stay down. Stay down, because if you rise up, I don't know if people are going to like you. I don't know if you'll be pleasing anybody today. So there's a tug and pull every day between the godly soul and the animal soul. So this is what Rivka says, God, I feel torn. I'm to blame. What did I do wrong? And God says, no, let me explain to you how I created you. I created you with two souls. It's like a mini city. A city is a complex. There's all machinations going on. The goal that we strive and work for our entire life, says the Alter Rebbe and the Tanya, the Kabbalah primer, we call it. It's not such a primer, is to create unity between your godly soul and your animal soul, where every day your godly soul leads and the animal soul begins to follow like a little puppy dog. It could be ferocious if you allow it to lead your life, or it could be tamed, where it follows the direction of the godly soul. Godly says, so listen, I know you're hungry. We're going to daven first. We're going to say our prayers. We're going to do a little tzedakah. Then we're going to sit down and eat a nice hearty breakfast. So the goal of the human being on earth is to constantly work on creating the unity between the godly soul within us and the animalistic soul. And it is a struggle of our entire lives. Only the very holy, righteous are always have the godly soul leading. The rest of us, forget, I'm not going to say about you. Me, every day is a challenge. Every day is a challenge. Should I be a people pleaser? Because, maybe if I please people, because I didn't even know in my life that I could ever be good. My parents always told me I'm not so good. And it's so conflicted and entangled. It's so complicated. I guess that's the whole idea of the therapy, realizing how complicated life is and the impact of parents having expectations of us that we couldn't reach, or parents that never appreciated their child, or parents that brought their own trauma into the raising of their children, thinking their children are going to have the same life they had, generational trauma, generational problems. So in this Torah portion, it's not only a tale of two cities, a tale of two twins, Esau and Yaakov, and we're going to soon talk about them. It's the story of you and me, where the quintessential mama, Rivka, Rebecca, the matriarch of the Jewish people at this time, she says, Miza Neichi. She goes to God, she says, I'm really confused about myself. On the first level, she's confused about her children. What did I do? How can I change this? How painful it is for someone to have an Esau and a Jacob. And then on a deeper Kabbalistic insight, God is telling her the ways of man, how your psyche looks. He's explaining to her what's really going on in your life. Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't walk around blaming yourself. You're going to have those days where your animalistic soul leads you. But don't let that define you. We all stumble and fall, God is telling her. We all have struggles. The key is to make sure that slowly you gravitate and allow your godly soul to shine within you. And that takes constant work, because things do come up. And when things come up, we think we're healed, we think we're perfect, and then everything got buried deep, comes back up. I'm really not such a good mother. I'm really not such a good wife. I could have done that. I should have done that. Yiddish guilt, right? Who here does not have Jewish guilt? Raise your hand. Okay, good. Now I know that you're all, you're Jewish. They say, what's Alzheimer's, Jewish Alzheimer's? You forget everything but the guilt. Which mother here doesn't feel guilt every time something goes wrong, even though it's not your fault? So this is what the conversation is. God is talking to Rivka and saying, hold on here. There's the blame game, and then there's an understanding who you are. Now, if God didn't want us to have a struggle, then we would have been made like angels, which is what the angels wanted. They said to God by creation, why are you making people? They're going to deny you. They're going to curse you. They're going to go against you. What do you need them for? Keep us. We're great. We always listen. We're obedient. We only do what we're told. We're great to be an angel. But God wanted the challenge. And I said this so many times, I'll say it one more time, I'm sorry. But when we rise, when we connect to God and our godly soul, God gets the greatest joy and happiness. Wow. They could have chosen the animal, they chose me. They could have chosen so many other things in life, and they chose me. They chose to be holy. They chose to connect, to recognize the Creator. And this gives God, as written in the Torah, the greatest joy and nachas. It's easy that the angels, of course, the angels were made like robots. They only do what they're programmed, AI, artificial intelligence. But when a person, a Jew, chooses the path of godliness and connectivity, even when we stumble and fall and make mistakes and hurt ourselves and others, but we ultimately connect to God, this is the greatest accomplishment we can have. And it is precisely those struggles that give us the greatest power, because it is someone who struggles, as we'll soon discuss with Esau, and is challenged and rises above. That is the greatest accomplishment. Because if you're the perfect person, you never had a struggle in your life, and you're perfect, so what? It's precisely a child that is challenged, a child that struggles, with his or her demons. For whatever reason, God gave them these struggles and they rise up. Wow. Wow. It's just beyond comprehension. This is what the God is telling us. You are going to have struggles in your womb. But how are you going to deal with these struggles? And the second point is accountability as a parent. She's what is this child that I'm giving birth to? How do I deal with it, Almighty God? What did I do? What can I do? What should I do? And we'll soon see what she does in the story. So here the Torah portion opens up with teaching us our psyche, our makeup, who we are. If you understand yourself, you're so much better to deal with yourself. If you don't know who you are and you wonder, am I a weirdo? Am I schizophrenic? But you know who you are, you realize this is the normal. This is the normal. You know, Winston Churchill, he loved to drink. And many times I read about him, he would come to meetings, he would be drunk. So one of his cabinet members called him out on it and said, Churchill, you're a drunk. He said, yeah, but you know what? Tomorrow morning, I'll be sober. Now I'm a drunk, but tomorrow I'm going to be sober. But you're an idiot now, and you'll always remain an idiot, he tells the guy. You'll never. So sometimes we're drunk. I'm quoting Churchill. Don't worry, it's not my Lashon. He says, but we'll be tomorrow. I'll be sober, but you're always that way. You're going to remain not so smart. That's what Churchill said. Like, you know. So there's a cabinet member. One more funny story about Churchill. I was reading about Churchill. So a cabinet member. Every time this cabinet member got up to speak, he was so boring. Churchill would take a nap. So the cabinet member called Churchill out and said to him, do I make you fall? How do you fall asleep? He says, intentionally. In other words, I fall asleep intentionally because it's so boring. He tells him. So that was Churchill. He was very, very outspoken. So does anybody want to add anything, say anything, ask any questions or comments? Okay, so now we're going to come to some very important questions, which you might have thought of. So the Rashi explains that there was a struggle. What was the struggle? That when she passed idolatry, people worshiping idolatry, Esau tried to kick out, right? When she passed house of Torah, house of yeshiva, Torah study, Yaakov tried to kick out of the womb. So what's the question here? Does anybody see a problem here? So let me read the pasuk and then tell me what you think the problem is. Okay? So now she gives birth. God tells us there's two nations. And let's see what happens. Vayigdulu hane'arim. And the boys grew up. Vayhi Esav ish yoidei tzayid. And Esau was a cunning hunter. Ish sada, man of the field. V'Yaakov ish tam. And Jacob was a man, wholesome man. Yoishev ayolim, dwelling in the tents of Torah. So now what's your question? Does anybody have a question? You tell me, in the womb, Esau didn't have free choice in the womb. Already he's kicking to be an idolater. And Yaakov is kicking to be a holy man, a holy tzaddik. Why is it Esau's fault that he becomes a hunter and worships idolatry and marries women who are idolatries from the Hittites? Can you blame him? God made him this way, even in the womb. The baby in the womb doesn't have free choice. The baby is dependent on the mother's, food inside the stomach, the mother's nutrients. How could you blame Esau that he grew up to be a hunter? He didn't have free choice. And Yaakov, great, he's a tzaddik, but already in the womb, God said there's two nations. And Rashi explains one already was aligning himself with idolatry, and the other one was aligning himself with Torah, with mitzvahs, with holiness, with monotheism. So my question to all of you is, well, can you blame him? How could God say he was a hunter? He wasn't given, it seems he wasn't given free choice. It's a very important question here. And we're going to get to it in 1 second. I want to build the case a little bit. Is that okay? So that's my first question. If already in the womb, it's declared he's going to be a hunter and doesn't follow the path of his parents and grandparents, you could argue, God, you made me this way. What's, why do you have a tying to me that I don't want to be like my father and my grandfather? You can't have the argument with me. Then it says he was a hunter. So Rashi says, what does it mean he was a hunter? And Rashi says, let me get to the Rashi. Okay. He hunted with his mouth. What does that mean? Side befiv. One is that he caught food and he gave it to his father. He fed his father. He hunted and fed his father. Okay. And the other thing is he deceived his father. He was deceptive through his mouth. What does this mean? He comes to his father and he says, Dad, Abba, I have a very important question. Look how he calls his father Abba. My question is, the matriarchs and the patriarchs were told follow the Torah and mitzvahs. They had the mitzvahs through prophecy. So though they weren't obligated to follow Torah and mitzvahs, they did it anyway. So one thing that Isaac learned from his father Abraham was the concept of giving. Let me tell Shelley, tell me if I pronounce this right. Tithi, T-I-T-H-E. Tith, how do you pronounce when you give a portion of your earnings for tzedakah? Tith, T-I-T-H-E.
Oh, tithe. You tithe.
Oh, tithe. Very good. Thank you, everybody. Tithe. So the Torah teaches us that we give meiser. 10% of our earnings we give for tzedakah. Even now, 10% of our crops that grow from the earth we give for meiser. That's the whole thing in Israel. They had to bring the first of the fruit and 10% of their bounty, their crops. What don't you give meiser from? Anybody know? Things that don't grow from the earth and anything that's animal feed. You don't give meiser from animal feed because it's not important. It's secondary. It's, how do you call it? Whatever. It's unimportant. So Esau comes to his father and he asks his father a question. Dad, how do you give meiser? Tithi? Somebody help me.
Tithe.
Tithe. Okay, you'll say tithe. How do we give tithe? From salt and from straw. That's what he asks his father. So the Rashi says he was hunted. He was deceitful through his mouth. He made believe he's a holy roller. But I have a question on this. He grew up in his grandfather's house. He grew up in his father's house. He knew you don't give from salt and straw meiser. How does he know? Because he saw by his parents. A lot of things we learn from our parents. Like I remember there's a guy I met. He's very wealthy. He gives a lot of tzedakah. I'm like, he was sitting at my Shabbos table and like, he's a doctor. He's a psychiatrist. Where did you learn to be so generous? I asked him. You're so generous. He said, my father. My father always gave tzedakah to his shul. So I like to give tzedakah too. So you learn things from your parents. You see what your parents do. So he saw that his grandfather never gave from salt and straw. Why did he decide now to ask this question? So the reason might be is he wants to show I do more than necessary. Not only do I give from my money, meiser, I even want to give from salt and straw. He's trying to show I'm a great kid. He was deceiving his father. But was his father really deceived by this? I mean, quite the contrary. The commentators say it shows his ignorance. And it's like saying, where should I put on my tefillin? On my knee or on my ankle? That alone shows you don't know what tefillin are. Tefillin go on the head and the arm. So by him saying, should I give from straw and salt? His father's like, oh, come on. You grew up in this house. And suddenly you don't know that straw and salt you don't give? So it doesn't show that he is pious by asking this. So why is he asking this? It doesn't show him in a good light. Does everybody understand the question? And then he asks his father, how do you take 10% from straw and salt? What do you mean? The same way you take 10% from money. Let's say you have salt worth $100. You have to give 10%. You give 10% of the $100 to the Kohen, to the priest, to whatever. The same thing with the straw. What's the question? That you can't figure out 10% on your calculator? So the whole conversation is very weird. How do you give? He asks, how do you give from? How do you give from straw and straw? And how do you give 10%? Is his next question. So the whole conversation seems very weird and awkward and strange in general. But we understand now, based on our studies, that this is not just a conversation about how to give meiser from straw and salt. We'll soon get to it. But let me just explain what straw and salt are. So before we bring everything together, there's a little understanding. What's salt? Why don't you give meiser from salt? Anybody know why the rules are if it grows from the ground and if also is not animal feed? Why don't we give meiser from salt? Let's say we have a salt factory. It's big business. And the reason Torah explains is because salt in itself is not considered edible. You can't take a bowl of salt and eat it. Salt enhances food. You put it in your water for hydration. You add it to your salad, to your cholent, to your gefilte fish, to your tuna, or I mean not tuna, whatever your dishes, your vegetables, to give it enhance the flavor. So salt is an enhancement. It complements something else. That's why you don't give meiser. And straw also. First of all, straw is animal feed. But the second reason also straw. You make bricks from straw. You could stuff a pillow from straw. You feed horses from straw. But straw itself is not something you're going to sit at the table and munch on, dipped in salad dressing. So the Torah explains these two items you don't give meiser because in itself it's not valuable. It's valuable as an enhancement to something else. Okay, I want to clarify this because it will help us understand the whole conversation. Now let's continue this story. Now comes the time, they're 6 years old. Esau sold his birthright to Jacob for a pot of beans, if you remember. He comes home ravenous from hunting, and he wants to take the food that Jacob is cooking for his father, because his father is sitting Shiva for Abraham, so he's making lentil soup or bean soup, and he's accustomed to eat lentils and beans during morning. And he's starving. Give me that soup. He says, I can't. I made it for Dad. He says, I'll sell you my birthright if you give me the soup. So he sells his birthright to his brother. Problem number one, which means he doesn't care about it. Then Yitzchak, he goes to his father Isaac, Esau, and Isaac says, I'm getting old. I'm going to be dying soon. I want to give you a blessing. Go, prepare some food for me, ta'amim, foods for me, and I will bless you. Rivka overhears the conversation, and she thinks to herself, how could my husband give Esau the blessings of the lineage, as he's the oldest, when he's a hunter, an idolater, and he's never going to continue the legacy of his father and grandfather? This cannot happen. So who knows what happens in the story? Everybody share. She takes Esau's beautiful hunting. You want to say, Sarah? She takes Esau's beautiful hunting clothes. She dresses Jacob in the hunting clothes. She calls him up and says, you're going to go to dad and get the blessing. And disguise yourself as your brother. And he does it because his mother said, and he knew his mother was a prophetess. And as she said, and I'll take spiritual responsibility. It's going to be on my head. If you think this is a sin, it's going to be on my head. Don't worry. And he goes and he gets the blessing. We're going to go into the details in a minute. Let me ask you a question. What is a wife who has a wonderful relationship with her husband? The Torah tells us the first time that Yitzchak loved Rivka. Nowhere does it mention love of husband and wife, only here. That Yitzchak loved Rivka. It doesn't say Avram loved Sarah. It doesn't say Chava loved Adam or Adam loved Chava, Adam and Eve. Only here, Yitzchak loved Rivka, Rivka loved Yitzchak. They have a good marriage? What do you think? They loved each other. It says it in the Torah. Why can't she say, honey, we need to have a cup of coffee? Listen, I don't know if you've noticed, but our eldest son is not exactly the candidate for the next patriarch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have a discussion with your husband. Sit down, talk it out, and come to a conclusion together. You're married, right? Does everybody agree?
Yeah.
She was making it easy
Yeah.
for him.
Go
She
ahead.
knew
Go ahead, Jane.
She knew he would agree, but he couldn't really do that. So this would just make it easy for him to do it.
Very good. Actually, I read a lecture from Rebbitzin, and she said that. She said that as an answer. She said that, let's say she would have had a conversation, and he said, okay, I'll do what you say, honey. He would feel resentment because she forced him to do what she thought was right. So even though he would do it, like Jane said, there would be a little bit of tension. That's what she
I don't think he would feel resentment, but I think
like what?
He would feel turmoil, and she was actually protecting him from that.
Very good. Okay.
Have to have that anxiety or that struggle with doing what she thought was the right thing and what she thinks he would agree with, but couldn't do because
very good. I love that. I love that, and now I love it. I think
him.
I'm sure one of the commentaries say it for sure. That's very beautiful. She kind of protected him in a way. I like that. Very, very nice. I think that's what also, I think this Rebbitzin Weisberg, what she was saying also, that the decision would not have been his in a sense, her decision, if she would have. But there's a deeper, that's a beautiful answer. And it could be, and I would actually be happy with that answer. But there's a much deeper thing going on over here. Much deeper thing going on over here. So before we explain why there had to be a deception, why he had to dress up in his brother's clothes, right? Let's go back a little bit to the Esav-Yitzchak relationship, the father and son relationship, the parenting relationship that's going on here. You don't think Yitzchak knew Esau's path? You don't think he realized? He came home with wives from the Chitim, idolaters. He was a hunter. His father even said, go get me goats. Right? Ta'amim, 2 types of food. Bring me, and we're going to explain why he said double the food. And why didn't he say, bring me food? Why plural? Foods. Ta'umim, he says, go bring me foods. You don't think Yitzchak, brilliant Yitzchak, who's willing to sacrifice himself for God in the previous Torah portion, who knew his father was bringing him to the altar. You don't think he knew his son? You don't think he realized that Jacob should be the next patriarch? And Esau's the hunter? Of course he knew, even though he was visually impaired, he was blind. He couldn't see. But sometimes, like Helen Keller says, it's so sad how people don't see. Seeing is not only visually seeing is understanding. She says, what a pity how people in the world don't actually see very much. So he knew his son. He knew his son. He understood his son. but he understood also what his son was. This goes back to the struggle. If he was born this way, could he be blamed? And here, the Hasidus and Kabbalah explain the whole picture. The picture is this, that Esau's soul came from a very high place. And because it came from such a high place, his struggles, his challenges that God gave him were also quite difficult. That every person in the world, God gives certain struggles, certain challenges, certain obstacles. The question is not, will I have a struggle or a challenge? Everybody does. The question is, will you fall and say, listen, God gave me this struggle. God gave me this challenge. God gave me this life. It's not my fault that I'm a thief. It's not my fault I'm a hunter. It's not my fault that I choose to steal as my livelihood. It's not my fault that I'm a rough guy. I have to defend myself. God gave me this life. God made me an orphan. God made me go through this challenge. It's not my fault. Or does the person realize, I don't know why God gave me this horrible challenge, and my brother or sister don't struggle with this. They soar through life. They soar through school. Everyone loves them. I'm the black sheep. I'm hated. I'm always the one picked on. I'm always the one that's a loser. Or do you say, you know what? God gave me this challenge. I don't know why. I don't know why my brother doesn't have this challenge. I don't know why my sister's not like that. But now I'm going to overcome this challenge. I'm going to rise above this challenge. I'm going to use the struggle as a catalyst to make myself the best I could be. So the Torah is telling us, yes, people are given challenges. People are given struggles. Esau was given the addiction of idolatry. Even in the womb, he was drawn to impurity, to idolatry. So was he going to use this challenge as a catalyst to oppose it, to conquer it, to destroy it, and say, God said one God. I'm not going to worship idolatry. I'm drawn to it. I want to drink. I want to smoke. I want to take that drug, but I'm not going to. I don't know why I need it and no one else in my family does. Why I have this problem, but I'm not going to fall into the abyss. So can the struggle raise me, or will the struggle lower me? So Esau had a choice. Every human being has a choice. And it's a very difficult thing to understand, by the way. Why one person is given a struggle that's seemingly unsurmountable, and it could be someone in the same family, the same city, the same school that doesn't have any struggles. But had Esau overcome his challenge of idolatry, hunting, killing, he would have been the greatest leader of the Jewish people. He was meant to lead, and he would have been great because he had a struggle that he conquered. What greater leader than someone who had and was, gravitated toward idolatry and opposed idolatry? So the Torah is showing us that people are given certain dispositions. Say, listen, I have a temper. I was born, my mother has a temper, my grandmother's a redhead, she has a temper. Everyone in my, from all the women have temper. So I have a temper. You have a temper, yeah. You might even say it was nature, not nurture. You were born with a temper. Even when I was born, I was already tantruming, you could say. My mother said I didn't stop crying. But are you going to use this? You have a temper for righteousness, lash out when somebody does injustice, or are you going to have a temper and you're going to fall into it. Say, listen, I'm a temperamental person. I was born this way. Even the color of my hair, excuse the cliche. I have a friend, by the way, who's a redhead, and she is the calmest, nicest, even-tempered person. So don't believe that just because you have a redhead, you have a temper. So the Torah is teaching us, again, some of the most pivotal, vital lessons in life, that we are born with certain dispositions. And you're lucky if you're not challenged. You're lucky if you don't have a struggle, insurmountable, seemingly challenge. But it's precisely because Esau has such a high, lofty soul and such an energy and power that he was given the choice, the struggle. Because let's say he would have gone the other way. What a testimony to the world that I was drawn to idolatry, but I conquered and I showed everyone, maybe I'm drawn to idolatry. Maybe I'm drawn to certain addictions, but I'm not going to fall into that trap. I'm going to fight it with everything I have and be connected to God and to what I'm meant to be. And Yitzchak knew this. Yitzchak saw the power of this, his son's soul. He saw the energy Esav had. He said, I'm going to give him the bracha. And this will help him become who he could be. A parent wants to give their child every opportunity. Yes, my son is not a scholar. My son is not, but I'm going to do everything I can to give him the step up in life. So Yitzchak is not at fault here. Yitzchak says, I'm going to give my son a bracha, and then he will rise. He'll get above what he's all about. But Rivka realized, so Yitzchak saw the potential of his son. And Rivka saw the reality. That's where they differed. And how did she see the reality? Because she came from a family of idolaters and hunters, like I said, dishonest people. She recognized it in her son. She loved her son. Don't think she didn't love her son. She loved her son, Esav. But you have to do what you have to do. Tough love. Like we saw with Sarah. She didn't hate Ishmael. She saw that if he stayed in the house, he would influence her son Isaac, and Isaac would be torn away from his path. She had to do what you have to do. When there's one child in the house that's promiscuous and dangerous to the rest of the children, you have to sometimes send them away. You can't sacrifice the rest of the family and the future of the Jewish people because there's one child that's acting out. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. It's not your first choice, and it's a very painful choice. But we don't condemn Sarah, because God says to Abraham, listen to Sarah. Why would God side with Sarah if it was the wrong choice? And here too, Rivka gives him the clothes of his brother. She realizes that he has to get this blessing. Esau with this blessing is dangerous. He's not going to rise above his challenge. And he doesn't. He doesn't. So now we understand. It's not that Yitzchak was deceived by his son's questions about salt and straw. Oh, my son is so holy. He realized what his son was, but he wanted to help him overcome his struggles. Now, just one more explanation on the straw and the salt. Esau wasn't really asking how to give tithe. Jane.
Tithe.
It's what Esau says to his father. Listen what he's saying. Dad, Abba, father, straw and salt, the most materialistic objects in the world. How can we make them the foundation of the world? He was trying to say that materialism have to reign supreme. How do we make straw and salt be meaningful? How do we say materialism is what matters in this world, not spirituality? Because our whole mission of spiritual, physical thing is to raise the physical to the spiritual. You take food, you make a bracha, gives you energy. You take leather and parchment, you make a Torah. Everything in the physical world is meant to be elevated for the spiritual, right? That's what our job is. But Esau says, no. How could we make materialism the foundation of this world? Forget about spirituality and holiness. That's not for us. We have to value money, materialism, straw, salt. So he's saying, Abba, Father, that should be the important thing. So he wasn't really asking a question about how to give from the salt, how to give from the straw, how do you give 10%? But he was saying his dad, don't you think that materialism should reign supreme? That's what he was really saying. Following his trajectory, that life is about, what I want and what I need and what I feel. He wasn't willing to relinquish his desires for meaning, for purpose. This is the path he chose. So Rivka wasn't willing to sacrifice. Yitzchak said, let's give him a chance. But she did right. And I want to conclude with a story about Esau. So who remembers, where is Esau buried? How did Esau get buried? So tell you a story to conclude and bring it all together. So this is Esau's way. He's saying materialism and so on and so forth. And he refuses to change his path to the path that that he could be on. So when his father says to him, bring me foods, and not one type of food, his father's telling him, there are two types of people born onto the earth. There's two types of foods. What are two types of food? Sweet food, yummy food. You eat it, I'm a chaya. And then you have food that's spicy, sour, but in a good way. The food is enhanced by different spices that make it spicy, soury. It's also delicious. There's two types of foods born into the world. You could be the Yaakov, this food that's always sweet. You're born righteous. You grow up righteous. You know your path. You know your light. And then you're like an Esau. It's a spicy food. It's a sour food. Sometimes you have to acquire a taste for it, like caviar. They say, put it on the cracker, put a little piece of red onion, maybe a little piece of herring, then you'll taste the taste of caviar. You just eat caviar, it's bitter. So Yitzchak is telling his son, bring me to Umim. Understand, Esau, that not everybody is born to sweet. There's also a food that comes out sour, spicy. But that too could be appreciated. So who are you going to be, he says to son. He's hinting to him about identity. Who are you? Yes, you were born spicy, saucy, soury. You have your challenge, you have your struggles. But you could become, in a sense, tasty. You could be who you're meant to be with your koyach, with your power. You have enormous energy. But he doesn't choose that. Even when his father hints to him, points it out to him. And that's why Jacob has to now wear his brother's clothes. Because Jacob was meant to be the future spiritual leader, the Rebbe, the rabbi of the Jewish people. And Esau was meant to be his partner, the king, the conqueror, the leader of the Jewish people. Together, they would have reigned supreme. That was their destiny. But Esau didn't choose to be who he could be. So now Jacob, the quiet, gentle scholar of the tents, has to put on the warrior's clothes. He couldn't just go to his father and say, Dad, I'm getting the bracha, Mommy said. I'm getting the blessing, Mom said. He had to assume the identity of Esau, the clothing, the warrior, because that was going to be his spiritual identity too now. There had to be a transformation of his soul. He was never a conqueror by nature. Esau was going to be the conqueror of evil, of injustice. He was going to be the fighter, the David facing, well, he's not a David, but the conqueror of the Jewish people, defending righteousness. And Yaakov was going to be the Rebbe, the one you go to with questions in Torah and Jewish law. And Esau was going to be now Jacob had to put on his brother's clothes and assume a dual identity. And we see he rises to the occasion. And that's why he had to wear his brother's clothes. It couldn't just be make believe, okay, he goes with his goes into his father, gets the bracha. It had to be a total manifestation of the energy of Esau. And by the way, we'll learn in the next Torah portion, there's consequences. It's not so much, I deceived my father, I took the bracha, and now I'm living the life of Riley. We see what happens. We're going to discuss. Jacob had a very difficult life henceforth. Jane, you want to say something?
I always wonder this, and I know you can't really answer it, but what would have happened if Esau got the blessing?
I don't know, but the
book must have been written on it or something. I mean, what did the blessing push him forth to do that he couldn't do without the blessing?
It's a very good question. I want to add, if you notice, when he finds out that his brother gets the blessing, he says, Father, he cries out, is there no blessing for me? And his father gives him a blessing, but not the blessing of the leadership of the Jewish people, a blessing for personal success. Mm-hmm. And he's successful, by the way. Esau is representative of the nations of the world. And look, they're successful. Wealth, power, but not the blessing of the Jewish leading of the Jewish nation. So he gets his father gives him a blessing. By the way, when Jacob gets this blessing dressed in his brother's clothes, he gets Esau's blessing of leadership. Now at the end, right before he runs away, his father calls him in and gives him a blessing that was meant for him originally. So Jacob gets two blessings, the one that was meant for him and the one that was meant for his brother as a leader. And his brother Esau gets a blessing that he will be rich, he'll be wealthy, he'll be powerful, as long as the Jewish people stay true to God. He will not rule, but once the Jews fall, he will rule. In other words, when we fall and we don't follow Torah like we're meant to, that's when the nations of the world rise up against us. They have the power. Only when we fail in our relationship with God, when there's a void, the enemies come in. When you don't protect, the enemies. So that's what happens to the Jewish people. God blesses Esau. You're going to be rich. You're going to be successful, but you will never rule over the Jewish people when they're loyal to me. When they're not loyal to me, that's when you're going to have the upper hand, which as we see, the blessing comes true. So he did get a blessing. But Jane, had he gotten the blessing for Jewish leadership, Yitzchak was hoping he would rise to the occasion and transform his ways. His mother said, no, it's not going to happen. We can't take that chance.
A chance of what? That he just would lead the Jewish people astray?
Yeah. But also, let me say, a blessing from the patriarchs and matriarchs is not just a blessing. There's God's energy in that blessing. That's why they say that everything we say, and we're plain people, I'm a plain person, impacts the world. There's a story of the Baal Shem Tov. He overheard two students arguing, adult students. They couldn't agree. And he says, I'm going to tear you apart like a fish. That's what he says. So the Baal Shem Tov called his students, said, everybody hold hands, close your eyes. And he showed them a vision up in heavens, how one student is ripping apart his friend like a fish. It actually happened in the spiritual realms. So what was the Baal Shem Tov saying? Your word is not just a word. You know, visualization, the power of visualization, you've heard of that, right? You visualize positive energy and it happens. You visualize negative and it also might happen, God forbid. So the power of words here are very powerful. Very powerful. Remember when Balak wants to curse the Jewish nation through Bilam the prophet, and God changes his words? Why didn't just God let him do it? Okay, let him do it, and I'll how do you call it? I'll annul it. No, words are so powerful. The world was created with 10 utterances. Words are so powerful that it's not just flippant. So your question is good. I may not have the exact answer, but I'm assuming I'm suggesting an answer. I can't be arrogant to say I could look it up. Maybe there is an answer. What would have happened?
Isaac thought one way, she thought the other way. You know, it would have been a whole different tragedy story for the Jewish people. But I wonder, you know, if it
There's another very beautiful thing I want to share. Do I have another minute? Do we get another minute or no?
Yes, I do.
Okay, one more minute. I shared it last year, so I didn't share it again this year, but I'll share it because I think there's very tremendous value. Last year I shared that when Jacob comes to his father and he says, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are hairy like my son Esau, and he saw the beged, the clothing. And the commentaries say beged could be clothing. He saw the hunter, he felt the hunter's clothing, but also he saw beged, the traitors of the Jewish people. That when Yitzchak blessed Jacob, he heard the voice of Jacob, which is the voice of a holy person. And then he also felt the clothing, but the clothing of the traitors, of the Jews. So why did he have to put on the clothes of Esau? So Chassidus explains. Remember I said that he had to assume the identity of the hunter? But Chassidus Kabbalah explains not only he had to assume the identity of the hunter, he had to put on the clothes of the Jews of the future generation, our generation. Jews that walk on the street, but you don't recognize them as Jews. They have the voice of Jacob. They have the soul of the Jew. They're born Jewish, but they don't look Jewish. They're wearing the hunter's clothes. They're wearing alien clothes. They're wearing clothes of society. They don't identify that they're Jews. They may even negate their Judaism. What Jacob was ensuring is that the blessing he got would not only be for the Jew that looked like Jacob with a yarmulke and that sits as holy, davening, praying, learning, that the blessing of his father would be a blessing for Jews for all generations. Even a Jew that doesn't look like a Jew that looks like a hunter, a Jew looks like a cosmopolitan hedge fund manager, a doctor, a lawyer, a construction worker, a plumber, electrician, a Jew that wakes up in the morning and says, maybe my Baba was Jewish, but I'm not Jewish. Maybe my mother was Jewish, but I'm not Jewish. The Jews that were traitors to the identity. Why? So that those Jews who don't identify as Jews, that Jews would have the blessing to be able to return to who they truly are. That's why he had to wear the clothes of Esau. Not only because he was trying to deceive his father, it's much deeper than that. Because he wanted to say, Dad, you know, you're looking at me and giving me a bracha. But what about all the next generation of children? They're not going to look like me. They're going to look like Esau. I told the story, I'll tell very quickly. Remember that famous German philosopher? He grew up an atheist, and he was convinced to convert to Christianity. in Nazi Germany, I know Nazi Germany. And what was his name? I could look it up, Frederick something. So the day before the ceremony of conversion, it was Yom Kippur. So he said, I never knew what it is to be a Jew. Let me go into shul. Let me go to one of the synagogues. At least before I convert, I'll at least have experienced something Jewish. He stayed 24 hours in the shul. He couldn't tear himself away. And after, the next day, they wait for him. He says, I changed my mind. I'm not converting. The traitor returned to his Judaism. We asked him what happened. He said, my whole life, I know I was born Jewish, but I never identified with being a Jew. I never knew what it means to be a Jew. I was like in a hunter's clothes. I came to shul once in my entire life, and I experienced holiness, godliness for the first time in my life. So I could never, never, never convert. So Jacob is telling his father, I'm wearing the clothes of the Jew that doesn't identify a Jew. But I need the bracha for that Jew because that Jew needs a blessing to be able to return to who they are. So he really took the bracha not for himself. He took the bracha for the Jew dressed like Esau, the Jew that would be called and say, convert. But when that Jew would experience their identity, their holiness, they would be able to return to God and to who they were. That bracha for all generations allows us to come back. When our whole lives we were like Esau's, dressed in those fur coats, hunting, congregating with the idolaters and materialism and so on. So this is what transpired here. There was a whole transformation happening here. So it wasn't that he could come in his tzitzis, his yarmulke, and say, Dad, give me a bracha. He needed to show his father, this is not just a bracha for me. This is a bracha for all generations. The blessing of the Jew that can always come back to who they are, no matter where they are and what they're dressed like. So this is the story behind the story. I hope I did it justice.
Thank you, Freida.
Yeah, thank you, Freida.
I want to wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful Shabbos.